How's it going, ladies and bruises? I'm Sixkilla. Welcome back to the letter. We're still Becca, and we are still talking with Tio here, and we have to decide whether we're going to go hang out with them and have a free meal, or go home because Ashton might show up, and we need to ask him to go to the housewarming party. I'm going to go because Kylie asked. Because I like Kylie. In the end, it's my own fondness for Kylie that wins out. Chances are I'll only have to endure his presence for an hour or so. If it lasts more than that, I can make up an excuse. Sudden call from a friend or things to work on. It doesn't seem so bad when I think of all the pros and cons. At best it'll be a quiet dinner, at worst it'll be an awkward affair with both eager to be rid of. I'm leaning more on the latter happening, hoping for the former, of course.
Okay, but only because Kylie asked.
Kylie's face instantly lights up. For the third time today, she tackles me into a hug before pulling away and dragging me by the hand toward the building's exit.
That's alright. I'm sure Tio doesn't mind. He let me pick where we're going to eat. Don't worry, it's just close.
Luke follows closely behind, and perhaps out of some desire to keep the dead air away, I can't resist throwing in a quip.
Keep your distance. You better not do anything funny, you hear?
I don't see how that's a quip. That's not a joke, right?
I'm the one who should keep my distance. May I remind you who approached me first and what you did right after?
Oh, I remember it clearly. But perhaps it's you who needs a reminder.
Do we have a book on us?
You seem to have never learned your lesson. Care we give it another try? Maybe this time it'll stick.
Maybe this time it'll stick. You think you're scary? Well, I'll show you what's scary.
To my surprise, his tone lacks the usual sardonic note in it, and briefly, I pause to stare at him. He quickly shuts his mouth right after and walks ahead of us. All talk and no trousers like the usual. And for the better part of our walk, except for Kylie's excited chatter, we don't speak. Somehow I have this strange feeling I'm already getting used to this kind of banter with him. I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing. And amidst this newfound friendship, dare I call it that, Ashton's message lays forgotten and abandoned in my pocket. Of all the places nearest the school, Kylie picks this one. And waiting for food to be served is as awkward as I'd imagined it would be. Not the bad sort, though. The pleasant kind. Surprisingly, Luke's an okay bloke when he tries. When he tries. He never tries. So, as long as you're willing to look past the tactless remarks, or when we're not exchanging acerbic quips, it's clear that he's making an effort for this to be as fun as possible for the 6-year-old by being chattier. Even goes so far as to laugh when Kylie's story calls for it. It's an interesting thing to hear from the man. More than once I catch his frequent cheesed-off expression easing whenever he looks at the girl.
And your friend? Did you make up with her?
Yep. She said she just saw something she didn't like. She didn't accept the jellies, though. She told me to give it to you instead. She knows you like the red ones, too.
Very well. Hand it to me later. I'll bring some of them home. I think your Tia would love to have some.
What a terrible liar. Once Kylie wanders to the nearby bookshelves, after having lost interest in the conversation, however we both revert back to silence. On our own, we have little to talk about, aside from a few questions about the other here and there. At one point it does veer on local politics and history. He's surprisingly well versed with it, that he can hold a decent conversation without throwing a jibe. Nothing too personal is ever mentioned so far though. It's too early for those, and besides, I don't like him enough to speak of every minute detail of my life. Better keep it strictly between the silence and the casual repartee. This whole thing already looks and feels wrong on so many levels. I'm quite sure he feels the same. So when another bout of silence hits us and becomes too much, I've taken to finding something else to occupy myself. Toying with my mobile, turning it from hand to hand while waiting for our respective meals. But it'll be a complete lie if I say I'm not waiting for some intervention. Something to pull me away from this place. Someone. Ashton's probably at Salem Well by this time, working on whatever business he has there. Maybe if I make up an excuse and leave now, I can still catch him.
Cut that out. It's distracting.
My hand stills, holding the gadget awkwardly between us, arrested mid-pass by his bored tone. He's been quiet for a long minute now, after complaining about how appalling the tea they're serving here is. Distracting from what? What are you doing exactly that we're distracting you from? Studying the wallpaper? Before that, he has whined about how uncomfortable his chair is and tasteless the decorations here they have here. Previous to that, he has griped about how dull the place is compared to the one he frequents in the upper class side of town. Well, I'm sorry for being a bunch of peasants, your majesty. Figures he'll lose patience soon, having already grumbled about almost everything his eyes can reach. It's just unfortunate he's turned to me now.
Why don't you just look somewhere else?
I can't. If I turn elsewhere, I might end up looking at the bobfuck right behind us.
Bobfoot? Do I even want to ask?
I don't want to hear it. If it's coming out of his mouth, it's only going to be rude or offensive. Regardless, he continues.
Everything looks good. But have you seen the face? True horror.
What is wrong with you? You know, I frown about this in practice, but that mouth needs to be washed out with a particularly potent soap, preferably by your own mum.
A shame she isn't here,
For whatever reason, that puts an end to the talk right away. He returns to watching his godchild, who has found a particularly interesting picture book and is now poring over it, while I turn back to my mobile. Still no message. Would it kill him to at least send a message? Check if I were home? Meanwhile, Luke's silence lasts all but 10 seconds.
What is it with the damn mobile? Are you on a curfew?
Yeah, I gotta check in with my parole officer, you know? He's got the immature act down pat, I'll give him that. Seriously, how old is this guy? Has he somehow been deprived of affection during childhood? He's a rich bastard, of course he was deprived of affection during childhood. Isn't that how it goes?
And what is it to you? I don't think it's any of your business what I do with it.
It is my business, all right? 1, I'm the one paying here. 2, I'm being forced to eat dinner in a place this stuffed and noisy.
We didn't pick it, Kylie did.
Lastly, it's been 10 minutes, the food isn't here, and I'm hungry. What you're doing with the mobile is annoying and distracting, when the least you could do is keep things entertaining while I suffer.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not being entertaining enough? Would you like me to juggle? What the fuck do you want from me? I'm not the fucking hired help.
That's your problem? Shouldn't you be more worried about how this entire affair looks to other people?
Oh, I didn't realize this was one. You move fast, Daisy. You could have informed me first, you know. Had I known, I would have taken you someplace nicer.
Don't lie.
Certainly the kind with better food and plenty of good wine.
Why did I ever think this was a good idea? Did it ever occur to you how inappropriate this might look to everyone?
Why should I care? It's only inappropriate if you make it out to be. Relax, I won't do anything to make your boyfriend angry. He doesn't even need to know we dined out. It'll be our dirty little secret.
He's not my boyfriend!
The words come out with more force than I've intended. By the time I realise my slip-up, his lips are already spread in a sneer. Heat slowly crawls up my face.
Oh, so there is someone. You're so easy to read.
Briefly, his eyes search my face. I have no idea what he sees, nor do I care to know, but the next second he barks out a laugh, displaying his amusement without reserve to everyone within earshot. In that moment, I know I flipped a switch in him somewhere and I've lost my chance to deny his assumptions. Do I even want to? Isn't that the reason why I've been so focused on my mobile, waiting for another message from him? For a reason to dump this awkward meeting to go after him?
Look how mottled you are. Now the nickname makes more sense. Shy Miss Pink and her cute little crush. The color suits you, by the way. It matches the hair.
It's not a crush!
Classic denial. But in reality, you want him to be yours, and your every move is made to make him notice you. In fact, you don't want him to see you with another man in a non-professional capacity, because he might misinterpret it.
You're married, so we don't need to worry, right?
The same thing goes for you, doesn't it? Bloody, yours is even worse. What about your wife? Aren't you concerned she might misinterpret this?
Daisy, just because we tied the knot doesn't mean we have to be joined at the hip at every single opportunity.
Don't be ridiculous. Why else would you marry her if you don't want to be with her for the rest of your lives?
Because, Daisy, she also has other things she can do with her life and friends to spend time with. Granted, I don't like some of them, and I have a few of my own she utterly dislikes. But wifey doesn't have to know my every move. Nor do I hers. Do you know how boring that would be? To be with the same person for all hours of the day, losing sleep over the mere fact they're not with you, or putting everything you have aside to please them, to have your whole world revolve around one person.
Aren't you just mistaking that for something else? Unlike you, there are other people here who don't share the same jaded outlook you have. Don't don't lump everyone together just because it didn't work out for you.
And you, my dear, are unexpectedly naive.
What's so naive about it? If you love each other, wouldn't you want to always see them, be with them, to have them focus solely on you? Maybe you haven't been loved enough.
Oh, it's that kind of thing for you, isn't it? The love is eternal, love is a strong emotion shite. A starry-eyed girl pining for her dashing Prince Charming? What's next? Romantic confessions of love? A grand wedding on the beach? Dozens of spawns running around in some picturesque home in the suburbs?
Spawns.
How quaint. Are you also expecting it's going to be sunshine and rainbows after? A happily ever after? Please.
What? I never once said... And is all of that such a bad thing to hope for?
Woman, I've been married for 7 years, and I'm telling you, it's far from what you have in your pretty red head. Tell me, how long has this song and dance been going for you and your man? Maybe I am mistaken.
Averting my eyes from him is all I managed to do. What does his mere 7 years have compared to the 17 I've had with Ash? It's laughable he thinks those two are even comparable. Ash and I may never have moved past the boundaries of friendship, like what I'm hoping for years. But what we have isn't something anyone can scoff at. I've always been by his side, endured everything with him. I know him better than anyone. No matter what this man, a complete stranger, says, I know there will always be a place for him beside me. And yet...
Come on, Daisy, that shouldn't be too hard. 3, 5, 8, 10, 20...
His words easily seep into my heart like sharp daggers, gradually picking apart everything I've ever been sure of. Despite myself, the doubts resurface and my defenses crumble right in front of my eyes. It's no wonder he sees through me, and as expected, he ridicules it. Restrained, low and rumbling, a sharp sound striking the air around us. Amidst the murmur of people and the soft notes of the music playing over our heads. His shoulders shake when his mirth becomes too much even for him. He reaches up a hand and passes it over my face, as if I'm to hold his glee close to him.
Lordy bullocks, this is just brilliant. Oh, mother, why do I always keep running into these things? This day couldn't get any better. I think I'm gonna need a stiff drink after this.
He dissolves into another peal of laughter, but when it subsides, what he has for me are more words. Scathing, each of them. The urge to run from here has never been this strong.
Is everything you said how you plan to act, if that man of yours ever ends up with you? Cling to him? Put him on a bloody pedestal? Let him become the center of your universe? Although with how long this seems to be going on, I think you've already done so. Marriage will just be icing on the top. Like some sort of reward for you, isn't it? For being a good, patient, loyal little girl all this time. Never looking at another man. He must have been having a grand time with someone pining over him this long. I'm a little envious, to be honest. Maybe also a little surprised he hasn't suffocated from all your attention yet.
Laugh all about it if you want. It's not like you'll ever understand.
Luke falls silent. The ridicule in him is gone in an instant, and his eyes meet mine, sharp and imposing. A challenge, but I hold it against him with the same intensity because if there's something I won't let his opinion trample on, it's this. What does he know? However, he's the first one who looks away, focusing his eyes back to where Kylie is, and for a moment, I believe I've won. Until he draws a breath and turns back to me. The word he drops next, though hushed, hang heavily in the distance between us.
You're right. I won't. But I do know not to mistake love for obsession, woman. They are not the same thing.
It rattles. Out of everything he said tonight, this is the one thing that twinges my heart. Maybe it's in the manner he delivers it, the lack of conceit in his posture, or an underlying insult in the tone he takes. The remark is not meant to cut, merely to express a simple truth. This time it is him who holds gaze against mine. Another unspoken challenge, and I realize that if this happened minutes before, I'd already have an equally searing retort at the tip of my tongue. There's none. But the anger is there, wringing at my insides, prodding at the uncertainties I've long kept. It isn't enough. Isn't it enough? We have the long years we've been together. We have the memories. Whenever he needs me, until other people have come between us, I've always been the one there. That dedication and loyalty should mean something, shouldn't it? I've always been sure of it, and one day, he'll see it for what it is. In spite of that, in this minute, under this man's scrutiny, my own heart wavers. Now I struggle to find the words. Why are we still arguing with him about this? He's, to you, a complete stranger. Why are we having this conversation? Why not just say, okay, whatever, and go back to eating your meal, or whatever? What does it matter? I don't need to answer that. However, those are for me to ponder on. This ass doesn't need to hear them, and neither is he entitled to them, just because he dished out some profound-sounding life wisdom no one asked for. So I look away, hoping my own silence will be enough of an answer for him. And it is, for a moment. Up until warm, furious tears prickle behind my eyes, stinging, begging for release, along with every other frustration this dumb talk has built up in me. All because of this man. I hate him. I hate the fact that he is to be the one to see me in this sorry state. I'm already expecting another barb from him when his expression shifts. Except, he panics. In the span of 3 seconds, his expression changes from indifferent to concerned, to utter panic. It would probably have been funny if I weren't so irked at the sight of this glykit bastard.
Hey, are you crying? Are you going to cry? Stop that right now, woman, or I'll...
Will you shut up?
He clams up almost before I can finish. Whether this is due to the sudden force of my voice or how I look, I pretend not to think of it. He seems like a deer caught in the headlights, the way he's making himself smaller in his seat. But I'm still pissed. I'm tired, and if I can't punch him, I can at least scream at him.
You're an annoying bag of dick, you know that? If I hear another word from you, I'm sewing that bloody mouth shut myself!
It does do the trick. Not to the effect I've hoped, but the moment I snapped at him, the stinging at the back of my eyes melts away and a strange calm overcomes me. A fragile thing when found in the middle of a busy coffee shop. Nevertheless, it's appreciated considering it doesn't last, immediately broken by the very person that put me in the state with a few awkward pats on my shoulder. Done twice, thrice, and another, until my patience runs out again and I'm pulling out the book from my bag, raising it threateningly over his head. It'll surely dent his skull if I slam it down at this height. Part of me wants to see that, but I restrain myself. He has a good sense to recoil, though. Shortly, he shrinks back to his seat and waves his hand in front of him in a gesture of surrender.
Watch that book, woman! I already warned you about your little threats. You don't want to see my brand of angry!
Have you seen her brand of angry? It involves book attacks.
Then keep your hands to yourself!
And ball attacks.
Alright, that's it. People these days. I swear you treat them nicely and this is where it gets me.
You're the last person I'd ever want to comfort me. Even if we're the only 2 remaining people on Earth. Don't flatter yourself.
Okay, have it your way, Daisy.
And stop calling me Daisy! I have a name, you know!
He mutters something inaudible under his breath, though afterwards he doesn't say anything further. For the next minute, he simply contents himself with making a mess out of paper napkins, folding them into clean shapes without any clear intent before crumpling them in his hand when he loses interest and dumping them in a small pile in front of him. A waiter serves our meal soon enough and Kylie makes her way back to our table. But before I can take a single bite, he mutters something. The words spoken in the same tone he's used since morning, all under his breath whenever the honest part of himself would show. Despite my rather confusing opinion of the man, I stop short of shoving food in my mouth to look at him. His eyes are on his food as he speaks, busying himself with cutting a portion of meat on his plate. But what comes out of him only rings true against my ears, above the din of the coffee house.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
He spears a piece of his food, pops it in his mouth, and that's it. One whole day with this man and I still can't figure out what his deal is. But for what it's worth as well, I don't think he's an entirely bad guy. The rest of our meal slips by in silence afterward. Aside from Kylie's occasional chatter, the whole dinner goes by without another word exchanged between the 2 of us. Somehow we managed to make it through the whole thing without triggering another tension-riddled conversation. A good thing, perhaps. 1, because Kylie's sitting in front of us, and 2, I probably won't be able to hold a proper conversation with my mind heavy with thoughts. We depart from the coffee house just as the evening crowd starts to thin out. The same wordless silence fills our short walk back to the school. Except for when Luke gestures at a nearby flower shop and enters it without waiting for Kylie and I. He emerges minutes after, carrying a bouquet of daffodils, with the same softened expression back in his face. Unlike the previous ones, he tucks this one away, almost as soon as he looks up at us, a moment he's not willing to share. In my confusion, he merely answers with a shrug and continues walking.
For someone important.
I accept it for what it is, if only because he doesn't owe me an explanation. It does leave more questions about him, each one as baffling as the previous ones. Those are the last words spoken this evening before we head our own ways. Up until I arrive at home, I still can't understand him. Here, however, a whole different set of questions awaits me. And much like everything today, it comes with the littlest of things. A lone note greets me upon reaching my unit's door. Its edges flutter lightly against the faint, warm breeze passing through the small complex. My hand stops short of twisting the knob as I stare at it, though I don't make any moves to take it. Ashton's neat script lines its surface. Dropped by earlier, you went around. Any ideas where Scaredy Cat is? I couldn't contact her. Inspector Abigail has a few questions. LPD stuff. Something about her dead co-workers. Anyway, let me know how the two of you have been doing. I'll see you later. Ash. The message he left, short and straight to the point, but not without the underlying hint of friendship. He's looking for Isabella, apparently. Something about LPD's investigation of her co-worker's death, but it ends in a formal tone by checking on me. Us. Any other day, the former part of this message would likely prod at the piercing envy I've been holding, while the latter will probably send my heart aflutter. Little things from him that I want to mean something more. Yes, this time only guilt fills me, and my eyes briefly shift towards Isabella's empty unit. Luke's words repeat inside my head as I do so.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
Have I always been like this?
This selfish? In truth, I've intended to call Ash after that dinner. If I didn't catch him here, invite him to that party like I planned. There's time, and he's still probably awake around this hour. But my hands won't move. And perhaps it's for the better. Until I've had the time to think this through, it'd be best if I distance myself from those I've been clinging tightly to. Find a different perspective and see things for what they are. With a soft sigh, I reach for the note and crumple it under my hand. The knob twists open with much ease when I enter this time. Maybe after some introspection, it'll be easier. For tomorrow, I have that woman in the mansion to worry about. Time for the party. The night wears on without further incident, despite the great number of thoughts swimming inside my head. Come morning, there's only a hush, a strange sort of stillness, unlike the ones greeting me every morn. This one's uneasy, tight with anticipation, like a string stretched thin, merely waiting for the proper time to snap. Granted, it doesn't make my day any less pleasant, but the edge is there. And as expected, the second I step out of my flat, it comes apart, broken by the voices of two squabbling adults echoing from a floor below. The quiet was nice while it lasted. Shame.
What the hell were you thinking?
I wasn't. Ow! Could you let go?
Not a few seconds later, they both ascend the stairs, with Ashton pulling Isabella by her wrist. She struggles, as she should, but his hold on her remains firm. Freeing herself means having to draw blood as she attempts to pry his hands off her with her other one, or using unnecessary force to push herself away. Neither of which is better than the other. One could potentially end in an accident, while the other means having to hurt him physically. She has the good sense to realize that at least. However, it doesn't take the desperate edge in her voice when she answers Ashton's temper with her own. So on they go, none the wiser to my presence.
Do you have any idea how much trouble you could get in?
That's why I'm asking you for help.
Is this what you've been doing these past 3 days? Because this doesn't make your case convincing, Isabella.
Rose died, Ash.
I know. Every single person in Luxburg knows. It's on the damn news. But that doesn't mean...
People are missing. Some of those are my friends. And BRC's just covering it all up.
You can't just barge into my office and expect me to do anything about it, right off the bat. This isn't a children's game, Isabella. We have procedures. We have to follow protocol. There's red tape all over this case for a reason. We sure as hell don't investigate things just because some stupid letter spooked us.
Ash, you have to believe me this time. If we don't do anything right now, more people will...
It's been a whole week. This stupid letter prank is getting old real fast. I'm sick of it. It was funny the first time, not so much now.
You're the only one that can help me with this, Ash. Even Rebecca won't.
All right, you two are awfully loud.
What's going on here?
Both of their heads snap up almost in unison. A displeased frown is on each of their faces, but this is a necessary interruption. What can they do? People still in their units have already taken interest in the commotion, with some taking a peek behind their curtains, while others are bold enough to creak open their doors, if only slightly. If they don't keep it down, pretty soon our landlady will show up. Getting a reprimand from her is the last thing I want to happen, first thing on a Friday morning, even if this is hardly my fault.
Well, if you want to continue this, you two better do it elsewhere. You're disturbing other people.
Don't worry, we're done here.
No, we aren't. Becca, I looked it up. I called them. I visited some of them and...
Which you shouldn't have done in the first place. Isabella, you're going to create more problems for us with what you're doing. A team has already been assigned to it. Leave it to us.
Your precious team is looking at it the wrong way. Becca, it's not just Rose. There are others.
That last bit strikes a chord, prods strongly at a memory. At that vicious smile already etched deeply inside my mind. The image appears clear enough that at the mere mention of it I stumble on my own question.
What do you mean?
The letter, Rebecca! It's not...
It's nothing. If there's really something going on because of that dumb letter, none of us would be standing here. We've all read it, haven't we? But Rebecca's alive, Zach's alive, I'm alive.
Zach's not alive.
So for the last time, this isn't a curse.
Not in this run.
There's a murderer on the loose, and your co-workers happen to be the victims. Give it a rest, Isabella. It's too early for this shit.
Don't you think that's too much for a coincidence?
Not so much. Most serial killers follow a pattern. I'll tell you about it some other time. And anyway, coincidence or not, the point is, civilians like you aren't supposed to get involved. You're putting yourself in danger.
I wasn't chasing after...
Will the both of you slow down and stop arguing for a minute?
No.
What's this about your coworkers, Belle?
Becca, please don't tell me now you believe this shit.
Sure, in a heartbeat I'll agree with Ashton. That's how it's always been. Besides having a very good point, really, they're the very same ones he'll make every time I ask too many questions. But the fact of the matter is, what he wants to hear from me right now is far from what I've been seeing, sensing, these past few days. It doesn't matter what Isabella or I believe on our own. Something odd has been happening around me, and that letter she picked up is at the heart of this. But however I respond to the question in their faces, only one of them would be pleased with it. Fuck Ashton. I might have seen her. Ashton in particular won't be happy to hear it. I don't care. Imagining the look on his face doesn't take too much effort. His entire posture shifts the moment my reluctance shows, shoulders tensing, brows furrowing, eyes gaining a sharp edge. He's already bracing himself for the disappointment. And it will be a disappointment. Not in a million years did I ever believe I'd be saying this either.
I might have seen her. The woman Belle's been telling us about. The one she said she saw in the attic.
Both of them stare at me like I've grown an extra head, and for a few moments, Ashton looks as if he's about to have a fit. A pause treads at his heels after a silence thick enough one can almost hear a pin drop.
You're kidding, right?
Do I look like I'm joking?
Really, Becca? Not funny.
Ash, I'm not lying. Why would I lie about this? It's been this way since the film fest. The past few days have been really odd since we read that letter.
Or maybe you're all just feeling under the weather.
I'm not sick. Don't you think I'd know that by now?
Becca, you're starting to sound like Scaredy Cat. Give me a break.
Why don't you?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, you two.
Isabella's voice cuts sharply through the conversation, abruptly putting an end to the brewing argument.
It's all my fault. This is all my fault. I was only hoping I could fix this before any of you. I'm sorry for dragging you all into this.
She breathes in, deep, steadying, and in that moment, something falls behind her eyes and she looks away.
I'll fix this. I promise.
A quiet resolve. The same one I saw in her that night from 3 days ago. But this time it burns brighter. Even Ashton wavers at its sight. When she looks him straight in the eyes, gaze unflinching, gradually his grip on her wrist loosens.
Belle, there's nothing to fix. The problem is...
Just this once, Ash.
Stop being a pig-headed fucking moron. Her voice though small and lacking any force stops him. Along with it, every sound, every noise dies around us. A hush descending, as if the world is waiting for her words.
You don't have to come with me, but if I don't do anything, I am going to regret it.
She lays a hand on top of his. Gentle, pleading, almost intimate, if one doesn't consider the circumstances we found ourselves in.
Please.
Ashton will never tell a soul, will never admit it to himself, but it is in that short second that his own resolve breaks. The moment the hard edges in his eyes soften and he relinquishes his hold on her, letting his hands fall limply to his side. Wordlessly, Isabella steps back and runs off, leaving only a muttered thanks and a small lackluster smile. Only after the last of her footsteps fade away does Ashton move, breaking the silence with one of his sharp exhales before reaching up to pinch the bridge of his nose in a gesture of frustration and surrender.
Did you really have to tell her that?
What do you want to hear from me then? That everything's fine?
No, I want all of you to stop putting these ideas in her head. None of it is helping. Never mind. Don't worry about her. I'll bring her back here.
He's already poised to leave when my own instinct takes over. I reach for him, gripping his elbow with the same unyielding grip, the action prompted by voices whispering at the back of my mind. He's already made it clear he's not going to believe me, but he deserves a word of caution. Who knows where all this will take us, how all of this will end. He shouldn't be caught off guard, beliefs notwithstanding.
Ash, I know you don't believe in those things she's saying. And you know me. I'm less inclined to believe in those things as you do. But I've seen something. There's something strange going on here. You don't have to buy it. If you don't want to listen to me, fine. But please, try to hear her out. It's bad enough that Isabella goes off like this without telling anyone. I'm just worried something might happen to her if she keeps at it. Talk to her, okay?
As if she trusts me enough for that.
We'll stop acting like an arsehole then, and maybe she would.
Doesn't the fact that she approached you first about this, instead of me, already say a lot?
A different kind of trust, granted implicitly and never spoken, sometimes too big, too fragile to last. He falls silent for a long moment as he turns it over in his mind. In the end, all he manages to do is offer a small nod before he departs, and a promise to at least listen to her, without the teasing or the jibes. A favour for me, and the least he could do for her. This is as much as I can do for him, as well until I've understood what's happening myself. Tonight, hopefully, where this all started will provide the answers I'm looking for. And with that, we need to wrap this episode up because we're out of time for today. Becca's chapter seems a lot longer than everybody else's, doesn't it? It's connected to a lot of people too. More to some than others, obviously. Very connected to Luke here. We haven't seen Zach at all, I don't think, in this run. Or maybe at the very beginning at the film fest, but other than that, basically not. Very little Marianne. Very little Hannah. But I guess that's going to change once we get to the party. But yeah, until then, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.